Hi, I'm Dan Linstedt. Welcome to a live podcast or broadcast, whatever you want to call it here at WWDVC. That's the Worldwide Data Vault Consortium for those of you that are out there. I'm here with my good friend, Cindi Meyersohn, also the COO of Data Vault Alliance, helps us run the conference. There's a whole history here that we're going to try to dive into a little bit. So, Cindi, one of the first questions I want to ask you is, how did you get into Data Vault? What interested you first, and how did that story begin?
So you remember that slide you used to have in the training package with the button that said "hit head here"?
Oh yes.
So I'd hit my head there for way too long. So I came into Data Vault actually searching for a better way, and interestingly enough, that's how most of my students come into class. They're looking for a better way. I had built Inman third normal form. I had built a Kimball star schema and continued to maintain that. And I laugh when I tell my students about that story, because I'm like, you know you're in trouble when you're the developer, the maintainer, the admin on a Kimball system, and you're the one going around that system to get data out. So I knew we were in trouble with that, that it was not going to be sustainable. So that was the first part where I started actually looking for a better way. I got moved into working inside the Department of Defense for 17 years. I got moved into a mission area, and in that mission area we were looking at an even larger data set, and understanding they had actually built a third normal form. I had already worked in a failed Kimball implementation. I knew that wasn't going to work, and they were failing inside the mission area. And so I started looking for a better way. And I read the Supercharge book, and I remember calling you. This was around 2014, 2015, and I'm like, hey, I read this book, can you tell me more? And you're like, put that book down. I want you to get the book with the car on fire. Now, this, you have to understand, to appreciate this, you're going from a book of about 100 pages to a book of 500 pages. And he said, read this book and then call me when you're done. So I read the book. It took me months because my head was wrapped around it. And then I called you up and you said, now you have to go to training. So it was pretty funny. And I'm like, training, where am I going? St. Albans. Where is St. Albans? So anyway, I came to training, I believe, in October of 2015. I met you for the first time. I sat in training with several students. And then at that point with training, you had to actually take the certification test the last day of training. So it was like, drink from the fire hose, now take the exam. So so I did that and I passed. Yep. And so that's how I got started. That's how you and I actually met the first time. So yeah.
Absolutely. So then from there, you went on to found DataRebels a couple years later. And somewhere in there, you came to one of the conferences as a speaker because I nudged you to do so. So how did that work out? And what was that process like for you to actually get a presentation out from under the DoD that you could come and bring to this event?
Well, that was pretty funny. My first presentation, so I came to the first conference in 2016. And so I had to bring a story out of the Department of Defense, out of a highly classified environment. And so I had to word that whole presentation in an interesting way. And one of the analogies I actually used is I went back. So my son is an Air Force officer, and when he started flying for the Air Force, they used the Pavlo 3. I don't know if you remember this, was my analogy. And talking about Data Vault with regard to the cost of build and development. And when the story of the Pavlo is quite interesting. So I used that in my presentation. And as I told you, I hate public speaking, and so I did not want to do this presentation, but you had encouraged me to do so. So I got out there, and you did tell me, let the audience know that, you're not comfortable. So I did. I was like, I'm hanging on to this podium because what you don't see are my legs shaking behind this podium as I delivered that presentation. And then as I was talking, it became more natural, and it just felt better, and I was more comfortable. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it was a pretty good presentation at that time, so it was good. So that was 2016.
It was an awesome presentation. It was kind of funny because I had been telling people for years that DoD was one of my customers. And in fact, DoD was one of my customers when I worked at Lockheed and built all of this stuff, Data Vault. So we got into the Department of Defense, but nobody believed me on the outside, right? That DoD was actually using Data Vault or NSA and all these other fancy agencies. So here it was, I had Cindi coming, and I didn't put her title up or tell anybody that, we had. So one of my opening jokes was, we have spooks in the room, but you won't know it because I'm not going to tell you who they are. And if you look at them directly, you're not going to see their face, right? So there was a joke going around that, who are the people from DoD that are here? And then she, at the end of the presentation, told everybody what she did, or was it the beginning? Anyway, you let everybody know. What was the approval process like to get that presentation out of there?
It was, I went through several, edits on the presentation. So it was pretty much the story inside of the mission area for the way the vault was built. I had to obfuscate our data sets, for example. I couldn't share that with anyone. And so that was pretty much it. The analogies around what we were doing with the data, particularly in the areas of data science, and how we were using the data, I had to be careful about how we explain that. And so once I was able to obfuscate that data, the data sets, then it was pretty much, they were clear. But it was an interesting process for sure. But we did it. And then we did it the following year because the contracting company I was working for at the time actually sent another gentleman up here, Mike Economou, you might remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mike had one of the funniest presentations. He was hilarious, and I think we still have that. So that was, I think, maybe 2017, 2018, that the DoD came back and presented, and that was fun. It was
a blast, especially to say that the DoD saw value in the conference enough to send another person to come and speak the following year. That just blew everybody away. So fast forward a little bit, you then left that environment and founded DataRebels. What drove you to do that?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. So honestly, working inside the DoD for so long, I was a little frustrated with the way, some of the contracting engagements had gone. And I had a real desire to help internal teams become self-sufficient. One of the things, even as a DoD contractor, one of the things that bothered me was that there were a number of talented government employees, and they had sort of been stuck. It's kind of like, it always reminded me of that movie, Office Space, where you got the guy with the red stapler, right? And he's stuck down in the basement, right? And so I felt like we had a lot of guys with red staplers stuck in areas where they, hadn't been able to improve their skills. And so it occurred to me, and what typically happens is, the government will hire contractors to come in. For one, you've got younger people coming in with more current, if you'll say, tool set skills.
Yeah.
However, the experience of your staff who actually know the data, especially in the data realm, are sitting there just dying to get their hands on new technology, and they're the last ones that are able to do that. And I thought that's just wrong. You want to invest in your people. And you want to make sure that they know they're appreciated because, in my opinion, they're your greatest asset. And so what I wanted to do was start DataRebels. And what we do in DataRebels is, I did get certified. You invited me to become an instructor before you invited me to become the chief operating officer.
That's right.
Becoming an instructor was a huge part of that. And so I was an instructor for the contracting company I worked with, as you recall. And then I decided to take that out from under them and go and start DataRebels. So the intent is to skill internal staff up so that they can be self-sufficient. And then the other piece that we do, as you know, we run Kickstarts, and I also coach. So pardon my analogy, but I do not go in and put butts in seats. That is not my goal as a consulting firm. We want to coach. We want to get the internal teams up to speed and sort of follow. I felt like one of the things I was doing with DataRebels is sort of following your mantra, which is to help people, and that's always impressed me. And so it's kind of my way of giving back and getting teams up to speed.
Awesome. Excuse me. So let's fast forward again just a little bit and move on. So you became an instructor. That took about 2 years, right? And it's a serious process, folks. It's not easy.
There's nothing like teaching in front of Dan. No pressure.
And then, so you built DataRebels, and last year I tasked you with something as COO. By then you became COO of Data Vault Alliance. We built this new company, right?
That was in 2019.
That was in 2019, yeah. So this was a while ago, but last year I tasked you with learning data mesh and Data Vault, and you really dug in. And this year you had this presentation, knocked it out of the park. I got probably out of the 150 people here, I got 60 or 70 of them that came by. The rest were standing in line, but they all said, hey, man, this is amazing. So talk a little bit about that presentation, if you will, and what it means to the conference and why you brought that to the conference, aside from me asking.
So aside from you asking, so one of the things we've done with this conference, and again, I've been coming since 2016, and I haven't missed since then, other than the fact we had the pandemic.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed about this conference is the themes that we pick every single year. I say we now because I'm part of the process.
Yes,
but,
you are.
We pick every year have been sort of topics that people are interested in. They seem like they're sort of edge case, but they're actually not when it comes to Vault. We spent, I think it was in 2019, I think that was a conference that we focused on data science, for example, and people were really surprised by that. But we've been working in the data science realm, and I had inside the mission, for example, I knew that Data Vault worked very successfully. We had, PhD student from Oxford University come and talk to us. So we had, Richard Strange, for example. So we've always seemed to pick topics that are sort of a curiosity, or there's something that our industry is really interested in. And so when you asked me to talk about data mesh, I wanted to dig into it because, first of all, I'm a huge skeptic. And so my first thought is, okay, we got another buzzword. Oh, yay, here we go. And so I started digging into it. And I think in the presentation, one of the things I did say was, my first sort of thought after I was reading the book and digging through it was that, did she read Dan's book?
That would be the book with the car on fire.
The book with the car on fire.
Factor book, yeah.
Yeah, because it just occurred to me, we've been building data vaults since you brought it out of Lockheed in like 2000, 2001, and the architecture, the methodology has always been there. And so these things were being laid out inside of the concept, the theory of data mesh. I thought, we've been doing this for 20 years. So what is it that's so different about mesh that it earns its own title, its own, set of vocabulary and things like that? And as I read the book, I'm like, there isn't anything. And so we've seen this happen in our industry over and over again, where you take an old concept, you slap a new label on it. And I'm not diminishing the work that Samek has done by any means. I applaud the fact that she's raised this, things like data governance and the importance of that. I think it's critical, but it's not new. And to her credit, she doesn't say it is.
Right.
So that was what, kind of got me really interested in presenting this and sort of taking if I can say, pulling the curtains back and taking the mystique out of, all this new terminology that really is just, common, well-known data engineering concepts and data management concepts that got a new label.
That's very cool. Thank you. That's huge. And of course, next year, here comes a pitch for the conference. You gotta come. And if you're out there and you're building one, we'd love to hear your story, the warts and all, in case you don't know. That just means the journey and all the things you're struggling with, because chances are you'll meet somebody here at the conference that actually can help you either solve the problem or give you ideas to move forward. So it's pretty cool. So I'd like to hear from your perspective, because you started the conference as an attendee, and then you grew into a sponsor, and then of course becoming the COO. You now help me run the conference, and the team, of course, that we have behind the cameras here that you don't see. But so can you talk a little bit about why you came to the conference originally and what it meant when you became a sponsor, and then, of course, the Queen of Fun and the games that we've had so much fun with, and then what do you get out of the conference, even now? What do you get from the conference?
Well, first of all, I learn a tremendous amount. The sort of the variety of speakers and the variety of topics and the experience, whether it's people that are stumbling through their first data vault, because we all do, or it's folks like, oh my God, like we had Chris Date and Bill Inman here, and we've had Bill here before, right? You have these, I call them national treasures. That come in and talk to us and provide the history, because as Chris Date said, if you forget history, you're bound to repeat the same problems, right? And so coming in as an attendee, I was excited. I had been, I've been in IT for longer than I choose to necessarily, confess to, but a long time. And I've been to, believe it or not, I went to the Wang conference. People are like, Wang, what is that? People don't even know what those systems are anymore. So that was probably one of my first major conferences. I've been to, IBM's conference and things like that. And so having gone to those conferences, I was always kind of in a position of anxiety, because which session do I go to, and sessions are split, and and I was always disappointed because I'd go to a session and they were always pitching something, which was annoying, because I came there because I wanted to learn something, and it was always a marketing pitch. So when you talked to me about the Data Vault conference, I thought, well, let me go check this out. And I've never stopped coming. It's the best conference I have ever been to, both in terms of content. But my joke is that the Data Vault conference is like a family reunion with all of the dysfunction. So we have, we've had some, I have lifelong friends that I have met through this community and through this conference, and we all come back for the same reason. We come back because we want to share that knowledge. And after the pandemic, we all just want to have fun together too. So
yeah,
I'll just throw that in there. It was just, but yeah, so that was, it's the content. It's like, I try to explain it, when I don't talk about the family reunion aspect of it, but I try to talk about it as like an academic symposium. If you want to learn something, you want to be with people who want to share knowledge, this is the conference to be at.
Yeah.
People are helpful. They want to help you work through problems. I had encountered a couple things. I remember one of the things I had talked to Kent about was working with a particular very large data set I was working with in Mission, and we talked about, what do you do? Do you hash a hash key? Kent and I, it was great. And so you get these, extremely knowledgeable folks that you're talking to that can actually, they've been there, they have the T-shirt. So that was a large part of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for doing this. This is what, year 10 now?
10, 11, 12,
Something
somewhere
like
in that
that.
range. I don't remember. Depends on whether you count the years we didn't do it during the pandemic. Well, just before I bring this to a close, I just want everybody to know, we get everybody from General Dynamics to Roche to MIT to Moby for Life. I mean, just on and on and on. The customer list leads right who's who. But they come, a lot of these folks actually present at the conference, free of their own accord. We don't coach them other than, hey, here's a theme we want you to stick with, and of course it has to be somewhat Data Vault related, right? But Chris states an exception because all of my work in Data Vault has been built on the premises and the principles of what COD and Data have done. It was just an honor to have him here. He's talking about coming next year, so he hasn't given us a yes, but if you're thinking about it, maybe that'll push you over the edge. I got to bring this to a close. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Cindi, and we hope to see you on the flip side.
Thanks, Dan.